The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no fuller on earth could bleach them. Then Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and they were conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He hardly knew what to say. They were so terrified. Then a cloud came, casting a shadow over them. Then from the cloud came a voice, This is my beloved Son, listen to him. Suddenly, looking around, the disciples no longer saw anyone, but Jesus alone with them. As they were coming down from the mountain, he charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone, except when the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. Then they asked him, Why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? He told them, Elijah will indeed come first and restore all things. Yet how is it written regarding the Son of Man that he must suffer greatly and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written of him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat, mga kapatid. Welcome to our Parish Church, to our pilgrims. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagdalo. Pakibati din ng good morning ang ating mga katabi. It's a beautiful morning. It's a beautiful morning to thank the Lord for the gift of life, for the gift of everything. Gayon din sa ating mga online parishioners who are with us, wherever you are. So good morning din po sa inyo, or good afternoon, or good evening. I asked Father Ignacio to preside the celebration today because he is leaving tonight, no? For going back to Spain. So Father, bon voyage, vaya con Dios. And we are praying for you, and we hope to see you again here in our parish. And Father Ignacio lives in Cartagena, Spain. Well, right? I don't know where Cartagena is, but it's somewhere in Spain. I had a seminary mentor. I love talking about my mentors in the seminary because they have guided me a lot in my journey in life, and especially also in my journey to the priesthood. I had this seminary mentor, spiritual director, who would often tell me about looking at the big picture. In our session, every time, he would mention it. Jason, you have to look at the big picture. Because more often than not, as a young person at that time, I would be very impatient about many things that I don't understand. I would be very impatient about my problems and adversities that I'm facing. So he would always remind me, look at the big picture. Never settle for the narrowed or dressed down picture of your life. This is the essence of the transfiguration. The Lord opening the vista of a bigger picture to his disciples. Yes, he predicted his passion and eventually death. He told his disciples that we are going to Jerusalem and the Son of Man will suffer greatly there, and he will be arrested and he will be put to death there. But not to worry, Because what you see here in this mountain of Tabor, in this mountain of transfiguration, is a glimpse, a preview of the glorious face of the resurrected Messiah. This is the evidence that things may go so bad, but it will not end there. Jesus gave them the big picture of the Paschal mystery that he will undergo in Jerusalem. That I'll suffer, I'll die, but don't ever end there, because eventually the Son of Man will rise. That is what our first reading talks about in the letter to the Hebrews. In one way or another, a summary of the Old Testament. The letter to the Hebrews talks about faith as the realization of what's hoped for in the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the evidence of things that you have not yet seen. And the letter to the Hebrews talks about creation. Case in point, he says, the author of the letter, the act of creation. We were not there, but in faith we believe that the Lord created everything. Look at Enoch, a very interesting character in the Old Testament. Enoch, the descendant of Adam before Noah. He did not experience death. He walked with God, and he was taken by God. In faith, we believe that God takes us to himself. Just look at this guy, Enoch, that we hardly know from the Old Testament. But he is one special character in the Old Testament because unlike many others, he was so loved by God. He walked with God, he did not die, and he was taken by God to himself. And look at Noah. He obeyed the command of the Lord to build an ark without knowing what will happen or where it will take him. But by faith, he obeyed. So faith is the conviction, the realization that God is with us through and through. It is the evidence, the proof of things that you have not yet seen, but because you believe, you know it will happen. You believe in His Word. That was what my spiritual mentor would often tell me. Look at the big picture. Sometimes because of our problems and trials in life, our vision of life becomes so narrow. And that's what happens when a person goes through a period of depression. Everything becomes so narrow. You're like in a tunnel, in a cave, a dark cave, that you can see the light. But the big picture is, the tunnel may be dark and long, but at the end of the tunnel is the light that awaits us. This is the big picture of the transfiguration. The Paschal mystery does not end in tragedy. The Paschal mystery of our lives ends in victory. Ako po ay uuwi ngayong February 20 sa aking pong hometown again to visit my mother who will celebrate her birthday, well, of course, in the cemetery. So I'll say Mass for her in the cemetery. But every time I go home and the plane would land in Daraga, Albay, ang unang bubungad po sa inyo, so I invite you to go to Bicol, no? Kasi yung aming pong airport doon, yun ang may pinakamagandang view na airport anywhere in the world. Kasi ang bubungad sa inyo, pag landing ng eroplano sa airport, the majestic Mayon. And every time the plane lands, I'm always excited to behold the glory of Mayon, the volcano that has the perfect cone. Yun ang magandang vantage point ng Mayon kasi nakikita mo yung kanyang perfect cone. Pero kung lalapit ka sa bulkang ito, makikita mo rin ang kanyang maraming mga uka, maraming mga kapangitan. If you look at the Mayon volcano from a nearer view deck or perspective, You won't be impressed kasi makikita mo na pangit siya sa malapitan. Marami siyang mga uka, imperfections, marami ng mga natipak na mga areas. So it's not good to look at from a very close perspective. But when you go further, when you look at the big picture, you behold her glory. That's the same thing in life. We need to look at the big picture. And sometimes we have to put ourselves some distance so that we can have a better perspective of life. Kaya dinala ni Jesus ang kanyang mga alagad sa bundok para magkaroon sila ng panibagong pananaw sa buhay. Sometimes you need to withdraw from all this so that you will look at the big picture of your life. If you're too engaged, too close, and perhaps too intimate, we only see the warts and the imperfections. From time to time, we need to distance ourselves so that we can look at life from a bigger picture and a bigger perspective. When we go through our depression and sadness, and when we experience life in its rawness, we only see our corner of the world. In psychology, they can explain this way. Pag masyadong malapit sa atin yung problema, wala tayong distansya sa problema. Sometimes we look at our problems in terms of the 3 P's, tatlong P. Kapag masyadong dinaramdam ang problema, we make it so personal. We think it's too personal and we blame ourselves. It's because of me. And when we are so close to our problems and adversities, we take it not just personally, blaming ourselves, it's because of me, but also we look at what we are going through as being pervasive. Pag masyado kang malapit sa problema, you think it is global, pervasive in your life. Parang lahat ng buhay mo may problema kasi nandun ka lang nakaharap sa iyong pinagdadaanan. So it's personal, it's pervasive, and you think it is permanent, that it will not go away. You think it's there for the long haul or for very long time. You have to distance yourself from time to time and realize that your adversities are not always personal or because of you, and they are not pervasive, only perhaps an aspect of your life, and that they are not permanent, that they will go away in time. Look at the big picture so that you will see that it's not always personal, it's not always pervasive, it's not always permanent. When we look at the big picture, we recognize that in the dark clouds, there is a silver lining. If you look at the big picture, you realize that in the midst of the hardships, hope is there. Faith is the realization of what is hoped for and evidence of things you have not yet seen. So we continue our journey. We don't give up because it's not permanent. It is not pervasive. It is not always personal. God leads us to look at the big picture, that at the end of it all, death will be conquered. Sadness will dissipate, and hope shall give us a new life. Once again, the reminder to us today, do not reduce your life to your sorrows and struggles. Always look at the big picture. The Paschal mystery does not end in tragedy. The Paschal mystery ends in life, in victory. So hopefully in our life's adversities, we always look at the big picture.